Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all very much for joining us this morning for this exciting announcement. I'm Michael Parsa, Member of Provincial Parliament for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill, and Parliamentary Assistant to the President of the Treasury Board, the Honourable Peter Bethlenfalvy. I first want to start with to acknowledge the land that we're on. Toronto is in the dish with one spoon territory. The dish with one spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans and all newcomers, have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Now, I'm pleased to introduce Kathy Taylor, Executive Director of the Ontario Nonprofit Network. Kathy has 20 years of experience in the nonprofit sector and was the founding executive director of the Volunteer Centre for Guelph and Wellington. Her career embodies the collaboration and leadership of the sector. She has worked with colleagues across Ontario and Canada, as well as the private sector and with government officials, to create an enabling policy environment for nonprofit organizations. Please join me in welcoming Kathy from the Ontario Nonprofit Network.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm here on behalf of the Ontario Nonprofit Network, which is the network for 58,000 nonprofits and charities in Ontario. And we're pleased today to have representatives from ONN's Board of Directors, our Policy Committee, and our former Funding Reform Committee. All of these people have put in a tremendous amount of time in their busy lives to help us advocate for a more enabling environment for Ontario's nonprofits, and we really appreciate their work. As many of you know, the nonprofit sector plays a vital role as an economic driver, employing about 1 million people in Ontario. And as a sector, Ontario nonprofits receive less than half of their revenue from governments, which means that they can leverage public investments via earned income, donations, and volunteer contributions into services that directly benefit Ontarians. ONN and the nonprofit sector have been advocating for many years to reform transfer payment agreements. Nonprofits spend too much time applying for funding, waiting on agreements, reporting on government program investments. This is particularly true of nonprofits that manage more than one agreement and have to report on their spending in different budget categories across different programs and different ministries. We also hear from the sector about being asked multiple times for the same information from funders within the same government, or having to go to government program officers every time they need to shift a little bit of funding from one budget line to the next. We know that this is not a good use of anyone's time. Every hour that a nonprofit spends filling out a form or cumbersome applications or trying to fit their budget numbers into program templates that differ from one to the next is an hour that they are not spending delivering services for people. Across the nonprofit sector, there is a clear consensus that transfer payment agreements should be based on the principles of stewardship, reciprocal respect, and accountability, and administered in a way that is simple, proportional, and flexible. Nonprofits that deliver services on behalf of government want to see administrative processes streamlined and standardized across ministries and programs. They want to improve their own efficiency by spending less on duplicative paperwork. And they want reporting processes to be easier to navigate and to be focused on the outcomes that really matter. They want the processes to be proportionate. Right now, the same paperwork is usually required for a $5,000 grant or a $5 million one. And finally, nonprofits have told us how important it is that savings generated by streamlining processes be reinvested in communities to support a healthier and more resilient province. Last winter, in our pre-budget submission, ONN asked the Ontario government for a red tape reduction initiative for nonprofits that deliver services on behalf of government. There are about 5,000 nonprofits that currently have agreements with multiple provincial ministries, but each one is managed separately. The number of transfer payment agreements could be reduced immediately by 14% without service or job reductions, simply through umbrella agreements. Streamlined, outcome-focused agreements can reduce administrative costs for both government and nonprofits. So we are very pleased today that the Ontario government will make transfer payment reform a priority through its Transfer Payment Consolidation Initiative. This is an important opportunity to modernize funding agreements so that both nonprofits and governments spend less time on administration and more time delivering services to Ontarians. The nonprofit sector is an essential partner to the Ontario government across a wide variety of program areas in childcare, youth training programs, affordable housing, Little League baseball, community health care, theatre programs, and so much more. These services are vital to our quality of life in Ontario, and they provide good jobs and volunteering opportunities in the communities where people live. It is important that our two sectors, government and nonprofits, work together to modernize service delivery and the behind-the-scenes funding agreements that go with it. Our sector's experiences on the ground, directly in communities, bring critical perspectives that are needed at the table as government plans for and implements changes. ONN looks forward to convening nonprofits to help them move this agenda forward in partnership with the Treasury Board Secretariat and all the ministries that have funding relationships with the sector. Thank you, Minister Bethlenfalvy, for your leadership on this initiative.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Well, thank you, Kathy. Frankly, this is why it's days like this is why I got into government. Every day is a special day. The privilege of serving the people of Ontario, the people of my riding of Pickering-Uxbridge, but this is an extra special day. This is why I got into government. So thank you, everyone, for taking time to be here. Thank you to my parliamentary assistant, Michael Parsa, for starting us off. And thank you again, Kathy, from the Ontario Not-Profit Network, and your members, your board members, for being here, and others. Your remarks clearly demonstrated why the Ontario Nonprofit Network is an impressive organization. As an independent network for the 58,000 nonprofits in the province, ONN provides policy development, advocacy, and other services to strengthen all of us across Ontario. The ONN has contributed to the vibrant, strong, and resilient nonprofit sector in our province, and your work helps maintain nonprofits as a key pillar of our society and economy. Now, before I get into specifics, I'd like to explain why today's announcement is so exciting. For me, there are a couple of reasons. First, as some of you may know, I used to work in the financial markets assessing the sustainability of sovereign debts. I also spent volunteer time as a board member for the nonprofit organization Crohn's and Colitis Canada, as well as True Patriot Love. That background gives me a clear understanding of the value of innovation, both in business and the nonprofit sector. Our announcement today similarly demonstrates the value of innovation, this time in government. Usually those words don't go together. Secondly, I'm excited by the success of our government's SMART initiatives. Starting with the line-by-line review our government undertook after the election of 2018, and growing out of the extensive consultations and careful planning we have pursued since, we are now seeing our efforts transform the culture of government. And that transformation is producing clear, concrete, sustainable, and wide-reaching success for business, for nonprofits, and for our government. The proof of that is standing up here with me today. Our government believes, and I believe, that building Ontario together means that we must work together with all our partners to ensure we're putting the people at the center of everything we do. We can't do it alone. And that is why I am so excited to be here with the Ontario Nonprofit Network, announcing our government's recent changes to transfer payment agreements. Now, today's announcement is a key component to building smarter government. In a sentence, we are changing the way transfer payment agreements are managed. We are simplifying transfer payments so that our service partners spend less time, as Kathy said, managing their government funding and more time making a real difference in the lives of the people you serve. That's where SMART initiatives come in. That's what government is all about. They are transformative projects that will change the culture of government and focus on outcomes and improve customer experience for all people in Ontario. Now, when I announced this plan to build smarter government in October, I talked about some of the exciting SMART initiatives that were underway, like Digital First, our approach to building a digital system that works for all Ontarians, a system that's easy, intuitive, and effective, and also the potential to save millions across government. And I've said this before, every transaction online means one less person in line. We also did an agency review, reviewing 191 provincial agencies that looked for ways to improve efficiency and effectiveness in line with the value of taxpayer dollars. And through our review, we found $125 million in savings over the next 5 years. And 47% of those agencies reviewed have found ways to enable better outcomes by addressing administrative efficiencies. There are others too. In fact, I'll be part of an announcement next week that explains the changes we are making to smarter government purchasing, which is projected to save $1 billion within 5 years. And I would highlight that these are about finding efficiencies. We need all the front lines. We need all the people to administer, to put out the programs. We have to find efficiencies so that we can free up resources, free up time, free up capacity. That's what this is about. Savings for the front line so that you can deliver what's important to the people you serve. So today's announcement highlights the great work underway to modernize how government funds transfer payments. Now, 90% of our government program spending is in the form of transfer payments. This funding provides support for nonprofits, healthcare, education, and human services. But the system in place is clunky. Our partners have to deal with almost 35,000 transfer payment agreements. But as Kathy has just told you, these arrangements and the paperwork they entail have real costs. The changes our government are implementing will not only benefit the people in this room, they'll benefit people who work in hospitals, schools, municipalities, and other service providers that rely on transfer payments in one form or another. Under our changes, individual transfer payment agreements will be consolidated. For our service delivery partners, that means they will spend less time on duplicative or redundant reports, which will allow them to devote more time and resources for programs and services. Transfer payment recipients will be able to access all their transfer payments through a consolidated online system, making it easier to apply and manage the funding. In short, we are simplifying back office administration to benefit frontline services because the status quo is ineffective. It's outdated and it's time consuming. We need to do better, and I know we can do better. Smarter transfer payments will allow our partners, like those up here with me today, to spend less time on paperwork and administration and more time delivering vital services in our communities. I want you to know that we've already had some quick wins. By consolidating early year and child care transfer payment agreements, we've decreased the number of agreements with municipalities by 50%. By streamlining reporting requirements for the employment service, the youth job connection, the literacy and basic skills, and Canada-Ontario job grant programs, we now require 1,000 fewer reports. By merging 3 locally administered business support programs into a single transfer payment program, we reduced the total number of transfer payment agreements by around 65%. And we've reduced community homelessness prevention initiative reporting requirements by about 60%. So we're working hard to reduce these burdens so that you can concentrate on delivering programs and services to the people of Ontario. And this is only the beginning. I have to tell you, I'm really excited about what we can all achieve together. You can learn more about transfer payment consolidation and our SMART initiatives at ontario.ca/smart. We'll be sharing regular updates on all of our initiatives as they progress, so be sure to take a look and let us know how we're doing. I want you to know that we are stepping up to the plate. This is an important moment. This is really an important moment because I know for years you've been asking for this. And this is why I got in the government. Days like today. We can do things better. We can do things smarter. We have to help all 14.7 million Ontarians every day, the hard work of many people in Ontario, This is why I got in the government. We are building a government, and I feel strongly about this, that our children and our grandchildren can be proud of. Not just a government for today, but for a government for the future. And that is what we got elected to do. Not just to fulfill a balance sheet commitment, but to ensure the vital services people across this province rely on to meet their needs. Our government promised we would change things in Ontario. We promised we'd spend smarter and put more money back into the pockets of Ontarians, and we promised to restore trust and accountability to the people across this great province. We're keeping that promise. And I'm committed to building Ontario together because, as I've said many times since I got elected, we can't do it alone. We have to work together. My parents are immigrants. They're refugees. They came here in the 40s and left during World War II. They came to this great country with bombs and bullets overhead. It's important that we reinvest in this province, that we do things smarter, that we continue to pay it forward. My mother's best friend went to Venezuela. She left in 44 from Eastern Europe as well, as an 8-year-old, and fled and went to Venezuela. You can't take things for granted. You can't take Ontario and Canada for granted. I learned that lesson through my parents. So I'm very proud to stand here today and make this announcement. Thank you. And if anyone wants to mingle, we're happy to mingle.
Nice job.